In this lesson, we're going to talk about the basics of strumming guitar. I'm going to be playing acoustic guitar in this video. It doesn't matter acoustic or electric, it's all the same thing. This is the first of a series of lessons on strumming, and we're going to be focusing on the first division of time, or the eighth note. We're going to have this explained a couple times throughout the course of the video in a couple different ways. I have found over the years of teaching that this is one of the most important things to get someone making music that makes sense to the player as well as to the listener. You need to understand the flow of time, physically feel it, and then also understand the mechanics of playing the guitar. This video is broken up into a couple parts. One of them is kind of a virtual blackboard where I'm going to talk about how rhythms are written, and I write them out so you can see it. The next part's going to be about playing. There's a printable PDF down below. It's going to be actually materials from other lessons that we've had, so you've got chord fingerings and rhythmic concepts and things all in one place. We're going to go through how to read the rhythms here in this exercise, just as a real quick shorthand thing. I've got lessons on doing this, but I want to do a real quick version of it here so that you can actually stick with this particular video. So, for the sake of what we're doing now, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that stream of beats, each one of these counts as a beat, put together is called a pulse. And our metronome, which I just turned my metronome on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of those counts happens on the beat. Now we're going to divide this. I'll do 3 measures here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The pulse gets divided up into 4 counts for this. There are other meters and other blocks of counting that we can do, but for the purposes of what we're doing today, this is what we're going to need to understand. Now, we have 2 rhythms that we're really worried about today, and one of them is the quarter note, and the quarter note is equal to 1 beat. So if you're tapping your foot with that metronome, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just playing on that. And for the basic strumming idea, we're strumming down on each of those. Eighth notes are worth a half of a beat. So we're actually going to have 2 notes per beat or per count, and the second half of each count is going to be called and. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Eighth notes look like this. All right, so they've got a note head, a stem, and then they're beamed together, and that beam tells you that that's what we have here in terms of the rhythmic values, that these are eighth notes. All right, and you can strum down and up or down and down. All right, for most of these rhythms, we're going to be going down on down beats, up on up beats. We'll be covering this in the lesson, but the last thing that we need to talk about is the idea of a tied rhythm. And a tied rhythm, we're going to put the eighth notes in here to start with, connects 2 notes it combines their value basically. So if I put these eighth notes in here, all right, I'm going to do this in red just so you see what I'm talking about. I'm going to tie the and of 2 to the downbeat of 3. You are going to strum on the downbeat of 2, but not, and on the upbeat of 2, but not on the downbeat of 3. So this strum will go down. Oops, I'm going to turn the metronome off for a second. Down, up, and then on 3, we're actually not going to strum on that guy, but you should move your hand down because you need to come up here, down here, and up there. For the alternate strumming, you keep the arm moving at all times. We're going to demonstrate this later in the video on the instrument, but I kind of want to explain it here. So anytime you see 2 notes connected here, you play this guy. Actually, let's give this guy some highlighter. This guy gets played, while this guy here, you don't hit it, but you let the note ring through its value, and you still move the arm down, but you don't actually hit the strings. You float over the strings. And then you come back and you hit on the and of 2. That's the actual next note there. We're going to divide this lesson up into 2 parts, kind of centered around the way the 2 pages in the printout are. The first one is just about the fundamentals of strumming eighth notes, or dividing it in half. And then the second one is where things get a little bit more difficult, talking about tied rhythms, or places where you have to keep the arm moving in time, but you don't hit on all the down strums. For the purposes of this lesson, we're just going to do everything on a G major chord, make life easy, and then there'll be other exercises in some of the other lessons where you can actually move chords back and forth. But we're really just talking about the mechanics of the right hand. So I'm going to start off with the metronome. The metronome is really important because what we're doing is we're building your clock. We've got another lesson on feeling time that's literally about feeling the passage of time and the smaller divisions of that time. In this case, the eighth notes. We talked about in the blackboard part of this video but let's do it one more time. There's the quarter note, right? The quarter note is on each of those clicks. Each click is a beat. The collection of beats together as it passes through in time is the pulse, and then we're going to divide the pulse up, and that's where the strumming actually comes in. So I'm tapping my foot. You can't really see it. Play my G chord here. The first exercise is just quarter notes, where we're playing one strum per click or per beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first division of time that we deal with strumming is where we divide the beat in half. And we could do it two ways. One of them is just doing all down strums. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And perfectly valid way of playing, but it's actually not the kind of strumming we're going to do today. We're going to do alternating, which means that we're strumming down on the click, which is the first half of the beat, and then up on the second half, which we're calling the and. So if I count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and my arms move like this all the way through. You'll see that this never stops, even when I'm not strumming a note on a down strum. All right, so we've got the quarter notes, 2, 3, or 1 on every beat. And I try to not let my hands stop in that motion. And when I get to the eighth notes, down, up, I can try and keep that nice and even. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The first variation on this is where we're going to play a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, quarter note, 2 eighth notes. And if I was to clap that rhythm, it would go 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And kind of here, I'm counting the ands even on the 1 and the 3, even though I'm not playing them, because I want to feel all those little eighth notes go by. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right. So when I'm strumming, this arm motion doesn't stop. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Sometimes I get students where they go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right? And the idea here is that we physically want to feel the passage of time, and part of that is actually accounting for every little piece of the time. In this case, the eighth notes are each half of a beat with the down and the up motion of the hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's the first half of this lesson. It's basically just the idea that you're always feeling the time in your body. All right, practice this with the metronome. Metronomes, you can get them for free on your phone or other mobile device. You can get apps. There's even websites where they've got a free click built into the website. You probably just Google it. Or you can buy an old-fashioned hardware metronome. Always practice with the metronome, because what you're doing is you're building the muscle memory of how it feels to play in time. Our second half of this lesson is the idea that no matter what you're playing, the arm still keeps moving, even when we play what we call tied notes, where we actually have a curved note or curved line that connects two notes of the same pitch or chord. So what will happen is you have to keep the arm moving or floating over the strings, even in places where you would normally strum, but you're not going to in this rhythm. In this case, most of these rhythms have a tie from the and of 2, or the up strum, second half of 2, into the down strum of 3. Let me show you. So on the second page here, we're talking about tied rhythms. And really the reason why we're so worried about whether or not a rhythm is tied or not is because we need to keep this arm motion going even when we're not strumming or hitting the rhythm on the downbeat. If I put my metronome back on 60, I'm going to start off just playing straight eighth notes, just down and up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 if I play the rhythm at the top of the second page with the tie between the and of 2 and the downbeat of 3, it'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now notice I'm saying 3, you're hearing the click, but you're not hearing me hit the strings. So if I turn to the side a little bit, you should be able to see my strumming hand. I'm keeping the arm moving, but I'm actually floating over the strings where I don't want to actually hit the strings. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... The next rhythm, this is a pretty common variation. I tend to play this one quite a bit. And it's quarter note on the downbeat of 1. And then we've got all eighth notes with the tie in the same place. So the rhythm will go, if I clap it, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... When you're learning rhythms, it always helps to try and clap them, especially with the metronome and also especially with your foot tapping. You always want to feel what that rhythm is against the time and then do it on the instrument. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I could take that rhythm and I'm going to play 3 chords here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a song called Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison, where you're going to play G for one measure of that rhythm, C for a measure of that rhythm, G again, and then D. So it's a 4-bar pattern or 4-measure pattern. So I'll put the metronome back on. Here we go. What you want to do is you want to make sure that your strumming hand never stops. All right, and that you never have to pause your strumming hand to get from one chord to the next. With beginners, a very common mistake is to actually stop the strum to get to the next chord. So you get this thing where it's like you play one measure, okay, and then you got to pause until you get to the next chord, and then play the next chord. We want everything to be nice and consistent time-wise, and if you keep the strumming hand moving, your fretting hand will eventually learn to catch up. But if you're always pausing the strumming hand, you're just training yourself to pause in between chords, and that's not such a great thing. The last strum we're going to take a look at is what happens when you have a rhythm that actually lasts for 2 measures and the tie happens across the bar line. The rhythm here goes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. This is a very common thing, and you want to be able to make the chord change happen. We're going to actually not do a chord change yet, but we want to make sure that the arm keeps moving and we're aware of where the beginning of each measure is. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And... If you're changing chords in a rhythm like that, most likely the chord change is going to happen on the and of 4. We call it a rhythmic anticipation. So I'm going to go from G to C. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. This is the first subdivision of time that we run into as guitar players, where we have to actually make the decision, are we doing a straight down strum or an alternating down strum, and making sure that we feel that subdivision physically in our body. Other subdivisions are going to have other rhythmic approaches, and most of the time those rhythmic approaches, whether it's a straight down strum, the alternating, or however we end up having to do it, is dictated by the music that you're playing. You always want to listen down to the drum set, you want to listen to the other instruments and determine what actually works the best. Once you're used to strumming this way, most of the time you don't really have to clap rhythms or count as much as just feel. You get used to the idea that your arm is moving and your foot is moving and you're feeling all of the slices of time. You feel where it lines up and you just know where it's at, and that's what we're shooting for. The next lesson in this series is going to be on 16th note subdivisions, or dividing the beat up into fours. And that's going to be more useful for slower rock playing, funk playing, and all of this rhythm guitar stuff is good for your lead or single note playing as well. Everything that we talk about is going to be linked below the video, links to this lesson's PDF, links to other lessons in the series. Also, please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because then you'll actually get notifications when we do put out new videos, as well as twice a week we do a live lesson, and you can always feel free to sign into one of those and ask questions about any of the lessons that we've put here on the channel.